What's going on, journalist family? Irvin and Felix John with the Fitness Journals, where I provide education, entertainment, and authenticity to the calisthenics game. How often can you? First, how often can you work out? And then how often should you work out? Now it depends, obviously, what style of training are you doing? What level of fitness are you at? There's different questions that you have to ask in order to get an accurate answer to that question. This is not a blanket statement. One thing I hate is when people try and give blanket statement answers to questions that are so multifaceted. As far as fitness is, as far as it relates to fitness and diet, like people giving generic answers. Oh, what do you eat? Bro, it doesn't matter. Like, what I eat is gonna be like, unless you want to be inspired to try a recipe and things like that, I get it. But people asking for that, like that type of question, in the hopes of copying exactly what some person did based on their results, hoping to get like the same thing. Yes, obviously the principles would be the same, but it's better to know the principles rather than what does that person do, let me copy it, right? So that's for a different topic. But how often should you work out? This is the question. Before I continue, I want you to answer that question. How often do you think is appropriate to work out? But before that, put in that comment what factors you need to take into consideration before you actually determine that answer, like that time frame. How often should I be working out? So before I actually just give the answer, I want you to write that right now. You know, I'll just say list at least three, or at least two. Let's keep it simple. At least two factors that influence how often you should work out. And then you explain to me how often someone should be working out. Ultimately, the first thing that we always say, it comes down to what your goals. Your goals is the number one thing. What is your goal? What are you looking to achieve? Right? So if you are a beginner, you should not be working out every single day at high intensity. If you're working out at 80% of your muscles, like threshold, how much you can actually push and still maintain an injury-free body, then, or muscles rather, if you were to say that it's like, okay, can I work out every day at 80%? No, you can't. And why you wouldn't want to do that? Do you want to get stronger or not? The strength development doesn't come from, well, it's two parts, right? But if you're just working, the strength doesn't have a time to build if you're not giving your muscles time to repair, right? Muscle, like the process of hypertrophy, muscle breakdown, and then repair. So every time you work out, you're creating micro injuries, micro tears in your muscles, which is exercise-induced injury. It's exercise-induced. You're injuring yourself from exercise. So if you're doing that, and then if you were to cut your arm and then it starts to close and you peel the scab before it even gets the time, it's not gonna heal, right? And if it will eventually, but it takes a lot longer. So it's the same thing with your muscles. If you're just breaking, if the rate of degradation surpasses that of recovery, you're gonna end up with not the results that you want, right? You're gonna end up weaker, hitting plateaus, recurring injuries, things like that, and it just makes the entire experience of getting fit hell, right? And that's not sustainable. Like, you can't do that. So number one of the factors that we have to pay attention to is fitness level. What level are you at? How often, how long have you consistently been working out? If it's been 1 week, you should not be working out every single day at high levels of intensity. This is why having a training program is imperative. And remember, training and exercise are two different things. You cannot say I'm training and then doing random exercises at random rep ranges without progressions. The way you get stronger is through progressions, right? So technically, I'm just going to give you a simple short answer and then we're going to expound on it. Technically, you can work out every single day if the intensity of that exercise is appropriate, and that changes throughout different variations of exercise that you're doing throughout your fitness journey. So your fitness level, genetics, things like that. Some people can recover a lot quicker if they're paying attention to their diet, do mobility stuff, stretching, deep tissue massages. If they're doing these type of mechanical recovery stuff, there's so many different aspects that play into recovery. So you can technically work out every single day if the intensity is appropriate. We'll keep it simple like that. The main aspect that affects how often you can work out is your intensity. That's the simple, right? So working out every day, intensity. What is intensity? So intensity basically looks like, what does the overall volume look like? So we're including reps, and if you have additional resistance or different leverage points, if you're putting your feet up to do push-ups rather than your feet on the floor, or your upper body elevated, if you're doing jump squats versus regular like box squats, if you're doing weighted box squats. So there's so many different things to take into account, but ultimately intensity. If you're training super intensively, it's not ideally to work that same muscle group every single day. I would beg to say, like, not even ideally, it just is not, it doesn't make sense. Like, you want your body to get stronger, you go hard, you let it recover. By the time it recovers, those fibers are building more and more and more and more and more, right? So when those fibers tear, you're not trying to get to the point of injury, right? Of chronic injury, of something that is like your fibers have disconnected, right? And it's important to keep in mind, like, when we're looking at muscle fibers and how they lay down, they have to be parallel. By the time they're like that recovery process, you might feel like, oh, I'm good, but if your fibers, the collagen, is not laid down parallel to the lines of force, you're not fully recovered. So you're gonna end up being like, oh, I feel like I'm okay, and then you get down and do something, and then you re-injure it, and then now you're experiencing that whole process over again. So it's very important to understand that intensity is the top factor. Intensity, diet, genetics, training cycle, fitness level, things like that. Those are they all hold a lot of weight, but it's very important to understand where you are, what your main goal is, and that's what will determine how often you can work out. My kind of limit is like, okay, if I work out, if I have to go out and defend my life right after I work out, would I be able to, based on the intensity of my workout? Right? And as you go further and further in your journey, progressively, the intensity will increase, and you could work out every single day based on like someone else, right? So the intensity level will change for you per se, because like, well, if it's that intense, like typically if you were to do that routine as you began your journey, week 1, day 1 of your journey, 5 months in, 6 months in, that level of intensity that you're doing 6 months in, yes, it's intensive for where you would be at week 1, day 1, but it's not necessarily super intensive for where you are at that time period, the 6-month period. So it's super critical to understand these principles of training, so you are able to strategically set your rest days, strategically set how you're going to train different energy systems, strategically set how you're going to train specific muscle fibers, like I talked about in numerous videos. That's what's super important. But just to simplify, so I don't like scramble y'all brains like, oh, what, he just said a whole bunch of heebie-jeeba and nothing, I can't even actually apply anything he said. The intensity of your workout is what will determine how frequent you can work out. That's like a nutshell answer that could just, sum it up. Frequency, intensity, okay. But for my approach, and what I try and give my clients all the time, is we try to go with the frequency over intensity approach, just so you could always progressively be making progress. But there's always a point in time where you train, like, you have to understand what your goal is. Am I going to train, intensely 2 times a week, and then moderate 2 more times a week, and then 2 more times on top of that is going to be light to moderate, that type of thing. And that's why understanding your goal, that's what will be able to determine that. If you're training hard every single day, you're not getting as strong as you possibly can if you strategically set how often you're training these different energy systems, different muscle fibers. It has to be strategic. You can't just randomly say, today I'm going to go hard, okay, the next day I'm going to go hard again, oh, the next day I'm going to go hard again. No, you're not getting as strong as you can if you strategically set those things up. So keeping it simple, you have to understand your intensity levels. That's why baseline data is super important, because if you're testing your baseline, you're able to say, okay, this is where I'm starting from. So 3 weeks in, I shouldn't be, moving lower from what my baseline is. I should be moving up. I should be able to change the variation. Let's say maybe you can't do any push-ups on the floor. 3 weeks in, you shouldn't be like struggling to do push-ups elevated or working yourself lower and lower to the floor. right? So, yo, this natty light, man. Sometimes you gotta stop and appreciate yourself when you pass a reflection, right? Because if you're working hard, you want to remind yourself you're working hard and why you're working hard. And the reason why you're working hard is to randomly look into mirrors or any reflection that you can see and just flex and let you know you're the god, you're the GOAT. You know what I mean? And that's what I do, man. Anyway, so the point I'm trying to make here, you have to understand the principles of training, specificity, right? That's super important to understand specificity. That doesn't just come down to like training movement pattern for skills. It comes down to what style of training are you doing for the goal you're trying to achieve. And then that's how you'll be able to determine what kind of volume you'll be training on a consistent basis and how you can fluctuate up and down that spectrum of volume. I know that sounded crazy, but listen to that part over and over and over again. How often can I train? It depends on my intensity, and I have to know the spectrum of my volume. Some days I'm only training body weight, so that's and not a lot of reps, just kind of basic eccentric training, you know, things like that. And then some days I'm doing high volume, high intensity, explosive movements, plyometrics, and weighted. So like that's max out effort training at 80, 90, 100. And I can't really see that being super beneficial other than like you testing your strength. Like if you're trying to test your 1 rep max on a like weighted dip or something like that, right? So just understanding the spectrum. Where am I at like 1% and where am I at 50? Where are you on the spectrum that you're training on a regular basis? That's what's super important, right? So then when it comes time to flexing, and it's like, yo, I'm flexing. Why? Because I know my spectrum of volume. And then look, I could consistently flex and I'm gonna get more, shredded, more muscular, and perform equally better than, you know, most of the population out there who are just exercising thinking they're training, but you're not actually training if you're just doing random sporadic exercises, which is why you need a training program, right? And then look, if you need that, you could go ahead and join at this time my 14-day free. Yes, you don't have to put a credit card in there or anything. And I give that because look, I'm so positive that you're gonna be like, so this is what a proper structure looks like. And if I follow this, like even if you do it, like go through for 14 days and learn how a structure works and you apply it to yourself, you could use that like is fractional, right? So you could use it now, you could use it for a month, you could use it for, you know, that time period, not, you know, for free from me, but you know, it will give you that structure that you need, right? So that's basically it for now, you know what I mean? So like, look guys, you know, it's always the warm-up. We always warming up. Even when you think like you going hard, that's the warm-up. That's the warm-up for like when you're actually going hard, but then that's gonna be the warm-up for when you're actually going hard. So it's basically always the warm-up. We're never not warming up. When you think, oh man, I can't go no more, bro, what are you talking about? We just warming up. We warming up for that next thing, and then that next thing is a warm-up for that next thing. So it's forever a warm-up. I don't want to hear no excuses. Otherwise, look, you're gonna end that. You know what? We're gonna end right there before we go down a rabbit hole that we don't want to go down in this video. But next time we will, because it's just a warm-up. Health is wealth. Get money. Remember, it's always a warm-up.